Yeah.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I think there was a lot of evidence-based medicine in last two talks. So now we'll move on from evidence-based to experience-based surgery. So I'm not going to give you any references or nothing. It's just my work from beginning till end, which we have done in our more than 1,000 cases. So without wasting time, I would start by saying that yes, it's a nightmare sometimes because portal vein thrombosis actually checks what all problems are there in the operation theater. So, Yardle classification, everybody knows that grade 1 to grade 4, it's more of an anatomical classification, but this is a very incomplete kind of classification, and there are many other classification, 9 or 10, which I remember. There are 10 classification, and there has to be other components of classifying the portal vein thrombosis. Now, in short, grade 1 and grade 2 are limited to the portal vein. They don't involve superior mesenteric vein. Grade 3 involves proximal SMV and grade 4 involves distal SMV. Although there is no mention of splenic vein here, but sometimes splenic vein is also involved in these cases. So when we decide that this patient needs liver transplantation, and on radiological images we find that there is a portal vein thrombosis, I personally and my team would like to know these following things, which are very very important. You can see that extent of thrombosis, which would actually classify which kind of Yardle classification we have. But there are certain miscellaneous, or there are certain PVTs, SVTs, and SMVTs which cannot be classified into Yardle classification. So what I propose, in all the cases, we draw a diagram of thrombosis, complete thrombosis, including SMV, splenic vein, and portal vein, and we also draw a diagram of significant collaterals. Now, there are 5 or 6 types of significant collaterals which we can see on radiological imaging. There are linorenal, which are the most common, mesocaval shunts, coronary veins, big coronary veins we can see, gastroepiploic veins, and certain periportal collaterals, which are choledochal collaterals. Sometimes choledochal collaterals, they are embedded into the wall of bile duct. And third thing, of course, I would keep an eye on size of renal vein, IVC, because once the collaterals drain into that, they tend to become much bigger. And also, I would also like to keep an eye where all the collaterals are draining in the renal vein or IVC. Before going into the surgery, I would also like to plan for the worst. I'll keep all the sizes of grafts ready, maybe PTFE grafts or autologous grafts or grafts from the cadaver veins if they are available. Adequate blood products. There is no adequate number as blood products, but every team knows their capabilities. So, depending on their own comfort, they can create an environment and they can choose number of blood products availability. And also we have to sound the blood bank because sometimes it can be very dirty. We have to preserve every bit of the blood vessel when we go inside the recipient. And last thing, there has to be a proper communication between donor and recipient. If there is no communication, then we tend to do more mistakes as compared to if there is a communication as such. So, having said that, having prepared for operation, pre-operative thing, uh, living donor liver transplant in such a scenario, there are certain principles and there are certain options we have got in LDLT. Now, these principles are, of course, as I told you, that we have to keep the diagram handy, anatomical diagram, collaterals, IVC, renal veins, because that comes very handy during the operation theater. Second thing, which is most important, is we should always try to create an anastomosis which will lead to physiological flow, that is from splenic vein or SMV or combined splenic vein SMV to the liver. Physiological flow can be also defined as a big collateral draining into the IVC or into the renal vein, and then renal vein anastomosis or IVC anastomosis with the new liver. So physiological anastomosis basically creates hepatotropic factors, and it also resolves portal hypertension to a large extent. But when these options are not available, a surgeon has to resort for what is called as a non-physiological anastomosis or reconstruction, which can be either renoportal or HPCT, hemiportocable transposition, or arterioportal anastomosis. So with these things in mind, I would like to take you through the journey of different Giardel classification and what actually we did in those cases, and then going on to present the results of what we did. So Giardel grade 1, it's very easy. Everybody knows it's none of his surgeon's nightmare. But as I told you that here we can see that there is a partial less than 50% thrombosis. Also, there is a big collateral draining into the renal vein. This is a linorenal collateral. It's very important because even after thrombectomy, what we sometimes see is less flow in the portal vein. So when we see lesser flow in the portal vein, it's important to either ligate the shunt individually, or sometimes some surgeons might prefer ligation of the renal vein at its junction with the IVC. This is again a second type. This is a Giardel type 1 only, less than 50%, but you can see a hard thrombus with calcification here. I personally would like to remove this calcification because this is a sitting duct for portal vein thrombosis even after transplantation. But there are certain Giardel grades or recanalized blood vessels in which we need not do anything. If the portal flow is good, we need not do anything for those cases, because if we do too much of thromboendovenectomy, it might land into problems. Now, Giardel grade 2, as we know, here we can see that there is a complete thrombus of the portal vein here, bit of collaterals which are pericholedochal and portal collaterals in the porta hepatis. This is a kind of SMV. This is splenic vein, and there is a big shunt in the renal vein too. So this is a Giardel grade 2 classification. Now in Giardel grade 1 and 2, generally speaking, we are able to do either anastomosis of the recanalized vein or do thromboendovenectomy. Now thromboendovenectomy is a very important procedure. I think every living donor liver transplant surgeon once in a while must have got this thromboendovenectomy done during the living donor liver transplant. But I have laid down certain principles of thromboendovenectomy. First thing is we have to free up the adequate length. We have to go retroportal. Once we pull the portal vein towards the porta hepatis after the liver is removed in anhepatic phase, I would like to dissect the portal vein in the tunnel of the pancreas as far as possible for grade 1 and grade 2. So retropancreatic dissection has to be done. SMVA, splenic vein and SMV dilatation sometimes needs dilatation because sometimes thrombus cannot be removed completely. But first of all, we always should try to remove the thrombus in totality. We have to see that there are certain collaterals draining into this thrombosed portal vein. When we do thrombectomy or thromboendovenectomy, we tend to damage these thin-walled collaterals. So a mental map of where the collaterals, especially the coronary vein. So when we do thrombectomy, when we do eversion thrombectomy, and we go at the base of the portal vein, what happens is that we tend to pull the coronary vein, and it sometimes it can get torn. So control of coronary vein outside and very meticulous thromboendovenectomy at the level of coronary vein is required. Sometimes that might require anterior splitting of the wall of the portal vein to do the thrombectomy actually under the vision. And we have to at any cost avoid thinning of the portal vein. We all know that portal vein thrombosis is a recurrent process, and sometimes there are multiple layers. So we should try and remain slightly away from the wall of the portal vein. Avoid hard clamping, because if we clamp it too hard, sometimes at the base, the portal vein thrombus tears apart, and that kind of creates a dissection in the portal vein. We have seen it in one case where we clamped the base and the wall cracked inside. Outer wall was okay, but the thrombus cracked, and later on when we give reperfusion, the it creates a flap, and there is no portal flay in the Dopplers. So these things have to be taken care while doing thromboendovenectomy. Now, Yardle grade 3, everybody, Yardle grade 3 is slightly difficult as compared to grade 1 and grade 2. It requires more control of blood vessels. So for this case, usually I prefer is a complete tunneling of portal vein under the pancreas from above and below, and pull the portal vein down in the infra pancreatic compartment, infrapancreatic and supracholic compartment, so that under the vision we do thromboendovenectomy. So here is the case of grade 3 grade 3 Yardle portal vein thrombosis, SMV, splenic vein, and large mesocaval shunt, which required ligation later on. Here was the diagram of this. Complete portal vein was thrombosed. Splenic vein is partially thrombosed, proximal SMV with a shunt. So what we did was we did thrombectomy after tunneling the we created a complete tunnel under the pancreas, pulled the portal vein down into the supracholic compartment and infrapancreatic compartment, did thrombectomy, evergent thrombectomy, then put it again into the tunnel to create a good flow, and also ligated the mesocaval shunt in this, and that actually created a very good flow. So what sometimes in grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3, whatever you do thromboendovenectomy, you ligate collaterals, you do whatever, the portal flow sometimes seems to be less in these cases. So in these cases, I would always recommend doing graded dilatation sometimes, doing significant, look at the collateral map again. If there are any significant collaterals, always ligate these collaterals, ligate large collaterals. Even if it means ligating the left renal vein, does not matter. But there should be a significant drainage in the left renal vein from the splenic vein or other major tributaries of portal systemic circulation. Renoportal anastomosis, if nothing works, of course, renoportal and hemiportocaval transposition is the last option. But if there are no significant collaterals, then of course only two options with a poor portal flow remains, that is renoportal anastomosis and hemiportocaval transposition. Sometimes the portal vein is very atretic, narrow. In these cases, of course, dilatation, patch venoplasty. Patch venoplasty, you can take any patch, you can transect the anterior wall of the portal vein, put a patch of the vein here, make it bigger. Sometimes when you make it bigger, the portal flow increases significantly, and you also do coronary portal plasty. This is a kind of a procedure in which there is a large coronary vein here and a small atretic portal vein here. You can see, and there is a splenic vein and SMV. What I do is I join these two walls here and make it a kind of a big anastomosis, like this. So there is a anastomosis here. So it becomes a big. We have done this in two to three cases, and it worked very well in those cases. So Yardle grade 4, which is actually the nightmare for a surgeon, because the options are actually very limited. But as I told you, that you should be ready with the mapping of all the collaterals, the grade of portal vein thrombosis, and the mental plan should be very clear. So I will take you through few case scenarios in this. So in the first case scenario, the SMV, proximal SMV was involved here, nothing was there, and splenic vein was normal. So in this case, when we try to do thrombectomy, somehow we find that more is the extent of thrombosis, that like Yardle 4. Harder are the thrombus to remove, because that signifies chronicity. So while doing thrombectomy, if the surgeon is naive, they can thin the wall of portal vein, and they can create tear in the base. Nothing can fear you more than tearing the base of portal vein under the pancreas. then the only option sometimes remain is to cutting the neck of pancreas, controlling the blood vessel, and but in that case morbidity goes very high because you are divided the pancreatic neck. So I always tell my surgeons to be very calm, don't take any risk, keep some wall with a portal vein, and keep a map of collaterals. So don't be too over enthusiastic in removing the thrombus in these cases. Poor portal flow after thromboendarterectomy sometimes is also seen, as I told you, but in this case, there was tear in the portal vein at the base. We repaired that and we did gradual dilatation. And finally, this is a post operative CT scan, which showed that there was a good flow from splenic vein and splenic vein as well as mesenteric vein to the new liver. Scenario two, portal cavernoma. We all know, we always talk of giving inflow from certain blood vessels which are not natural, which are collateral blood vessels. So there are many collateral blood vessels sometimes which are well formed, which have a well formed wall. Sometimes these are pericollateral collaterals. Sometimes these are coronary vein collaterals. Sometimes unnamed collaterals are passing through the porta hepatis, and we transact those collaterals and join them with a new liver. So in some cases, I've joined multiple collaterals together. Collateralplasty has been done, and that significantly increases the portal flow, and then we have joined it to new liver. So large shunt in the porta hepatis is a boon. Sometimes periductal collaterals are there. In those cases, I divide the bile duct. I close the bile duct from inside and join all the collaterals which are periductal collaterals, and sometimes put a small graft, a big graft on the top of that. So there are multiple channels draining into that graft, which leads to multiple channels. Suppose these are the multiple channels, and we join a big graft here, and these multiple channels are draining into this graft, and then join it to the liver. So these are multiple options you can do while reperfusing the new liver. Good flow in the shunt has to be very important because you have to ensure that shunt flow is good. Shunt anastomosis is done to the, like in this case, the portal vein was really a cord like, which we could not be recanalized. There was a big collateral in the porta hepatis which was joined to. And while joining the collateral, my technique is to evert the wall of the collateral and join it to the eversion will give you more strength to anastomose the collateral to the new portal vein. These are certain diagrams from some other text where they have joined this coronary vein, a side clamp, and then then separated the coronary vein and put a graft here. This is a graft. There are various techniques you can do. Sometimes I divide it here and reflect this coronary vein to do the anastomosis, because usually during living donor liver transplant we are short of the veins, especially in portal vein thrombosis. So I keep preserve a length, reflect it on other side, and then do the anastomosis. But having said that, you must be very cautious about the lie of the portal vein. There should not be any kink in the portal vein. Then again, these are again collateral to which I showed collateral. This is a porta hepatis collateral to new portal vein anastomosis, which works very well in patients. Scenario three, this was a very interesting case where we had a distal splenic vein thrombosis. SMV was there, but there was a splenic vein thrombosis here. SMV was there, but SMV flow was not really good. It was a small atretic SMV leading to a small atretic portal vein. So, and there was a big collateral going into the renal vein. So so first of all, doing thrombectomy was very difficult here because dissecting the splenic vein, which is sometimes very difficult beneath the pancreas. So what we did was a modified renoportal anastomosis in this case. So what we did was this vein we took took a vein, and this vein was coming from the renal vein. So this is a graft put on the renal vein. I'll pick up another color. This was from the renal vein graft, and this graft was from the splenic vein. This was from the splenic vein graft, not splenic vein, sorry, SMV graft. So SMV, renal vein here somewhere, put a graft, elongated the renal vein, then did a venoplasty of this SMV and renal vein, put another graft to make one channel out of it, and then another channel drained into the new liver. So this is how we made a Y-plasty, where the collateral flow was flowing through this vein and SMV flow was flowing through this vein. So you can do multiple things if you have a map in the hand of all the collaterals, thrombosis, site of thrombosis, and just with a small imagination, you can actually create a lot of scenarios. So here the same thing, SMV, splenic vein thrombosis. So this was draining into the renal vein. So renal vein from here, drainage, SMV drainage, which was low here, then multiple kind of extension grafts leading to the graft liver. So sometimes you have to do this jugglery to create a good flow to the new liver. So this was the post transplant image. Sometimes in grade Yardle grade 3 and 4, above options are not available. Everybody knows collaterals are not there, and in those cases you actually have to resort to non-physiological anastomosis, which is either renoportal anastomosis or hemiportocaval transposition. Now in renoportal anastomosis, certain surgical tips would be dissect and loop in the anhepatic phase. You have to be very meticulous, properly secure the renal vein. I like to do end-to-end anastomosis, and there has to be, you should keep ready the interposition grafts. Although I prefer autologous grafts, but sometimes they're not available, and sometimes we have to resort to PTFE graft. So this is a big collateral draining into the renal vein, then renal vein anastomosis to the portal vein. So this is kind of a physiological anastomosis only, but sometimes it doesn't resolve the portal hypertension, and then we have to keep the patient on follow-up for endoscopies for the esophageal varices, to eradicate the esophageal varices. And then there are various types of hemiportocaval transposition. We can completely transect the IVC, join the IVC with the new liver. We can do a partial flow. We can also ligate it, if not dismantle it. So there are various options available with different centers, depending on surgeons' expertise, experience, and choice. They choose between all these and then create. So ultimately, aim is to create a flow to the new liver. So that was this is a complex diagram. I need not go into detail, but this summarizes everything, even the medical talks. But generally speaking, we have to resort for physiological inflow reconstruction. If that's not possible, of course, non-physiological reconstruction in the form of renoportal transposition, renoportal anastomosis, or cavoportal transposition has to be done. So regarding peri-transplant management, my indications for so I think this is a pre-transplant management. Post LDLT, we have two issues. One is, should we continue with anticoagulation, and we should do more frequent Dopplers to detect decrease in portal flow or portal flow thrombosis at early stage. So anticoagulation, I'll cover later. Survival and portal hypertension. Most of the studies have shown that survival may be slightly inferior, especially in grade 3 and grade 4 Yardle grades, because the surgical options are limited. Surgery is difficult. There is more blood loss. There is more infection. So, but the data is so less that we cannot conclusively say that results are inferior. Small number of patients, grade 1 to similar outcomes, grade 3 and 4, of course, we can expect slightly lower. In Fortis Hospital, out of 1069 cases which we analyzed, there were 137 portal vein thrombosis, creating an incidence of around 12.8%. Grade 1 and grade 2 were maximum, that is, out of 12.8%, they were about 6%. Grade 3 3.9%, and grade 4 2.8%. So our surgical management choices were doing nothing because it was a completely recanalized vessel with a good flow in 29 cases, thromboendovenectomy plus minus collateral management in 98 cases. When I say collateral management, it either means collateral ligation or collateral drainage into the new portal vein, or ligation of the renal vein to create a greater flow in the portal vein. Then renoportal anastomosis in 4 cases, HPCT or cavoportal anastomosis in 1 case, periductal collaterals in 5 cases. So we observed mortality of 9 out of 137, but luckily most of the mortality was beyond 30 days. Only one patient died because of technical reasons, that is cavoportal anastomosis. But actually in that case it was a very badly done portal vein, grade 4. So because of I would say our mistake, there was a lot of bleeding during the surgery, which we somehow controlled, and later on portal flow was resumed. But cavoportal was done as a kind of backup option, because in post-operative period the portal flow went on decreasing and we resorted to cavoportal anastomosis, and that patient died on 35th day after transplantation. Rest all the patients, none of the patients died of technical complications as such. And in 1 year, most of the patients died between 30 days and 1 year, and they died because of various reasons like HAT, HCC recurrence, IC bleed, biliary complications, graft dysfunction, and MDS recurrence. Anticoagulation indications, as I told you, I prefer anticoagulation when there is a low portal flow during the surgery. Anastomosis has been done with a collateral. There is a PTFE graft which I've used, an underlying coagulation problem which was not corrected by liver transplantation. In these 4 scenarios, I would like to use anticoagulation for at least 6 months after transplantation. And of course, my preference is using warfarin. So to conclude, 12% incidence of portal vein thrombosis, all groups. Well-prepared surgical team is actually very important for generating good outcomes. Surgical principles should be very clear: physiological, non-physiological mapping. Backup of surgical plans should always be there, and good outcomes are there for portal vein thrombosis once we are very well prepared for handling the situation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vivek. That was comprehensive, and that was a masterclass in how to manage surgery in these complex patients. I certainly enjoyed that part about using the biliary collaterals as a single inflow, which is very innovative. I think that's something that is that's something that I have learned, today. That's a very big, good learning. I think that
I'm still learning a lot of, means a new case comes and you can't apply previous knowledge to that new case. So it's always different,
Yeah. So my only question is regarding the use of your say a graft in these situations. How comfortable are you using grafts? Because often in a living donor setup, you may not have access to a cadaveric vein, or you may not have autologous vein available. So one might be forced to resort to a graft, and that's never a very happy situation for me. What are your thoughts about that?
I agree. I agree. Especially for portal venous anastomosis, that is not a very nice situation to use PTFE grafts. But because we use PTFE grafts for all our middle hepatic vein reconstructions, we are somehow more comfortable in using that. So tips of using that would be, I think, use non-ringed grafts. Then secondly, when doing renoportal or cavoportal anastomosis, we tend to keep the graft slightly longer. Actually, trick is to keep the graft slightly shorter. Because if we keep it longer, it impinges into that kind of interoception happens into the portal vein. So if it keep it slightly shorter, maybe you measure it and keeps maybe 1 centimeter or half centimeter shorter than that, that will be much more effective, and that will align the thing much better as compared to if we use a longer length.
So again, that ties in with what you were saying about using a non-ring graph, because it's always a bit more challenging to do it with a ring graph, because you
Yes,
always end up
yes,
with a
yes,
better
yes,
expansion in
yes, yes,
while you're
yes,
suturing.
yes, yes.
Okay. So thank you so much for that. That was actually phenomenal. I
Thank you,
really
Sonal.
enjoyed that particular surgical exposition.
There was no reference.
I think you don't need a reference. I think you should be able to write a book with that.
Yeah.
You know, that's a amazing piece of work. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thanks.